or we step on it and it puffs. And you'll see this little cloud of smoke, where that is the spores being dispersed. But it's only edible when it's absolutely pure white inside. Otherwise you'll get diarrhea. It's not going to kill you, but you know, you want it to be white inside. Another cute little guy that's deadly, the Gallerinus species. So just stay away from little brown mushrooms. We do in our club. Half the time we don't even pick them to try to identify them. And this is Acrometerius, and I should have added a slide to, I need to make myself notes so I make a better thing. I should have a coprinus beside it so that you can see the difference between the edible and so this is the one that interacts with alcohol. It's in the coprinus family. They have this weird way they disperse their spores. They absolutely start out nice and fresh and beautiful like this, and if you don't have alcohol, these are good to eat. But then they just turn black and ink and just drip and goo, and they just dissolve. It's called deliquescence. They just dissolve. But this is the before when it's fresh, and that's what it looks like afterwards. And you can see the goo just coming down. And Coprinus comatus, shaggy manes do the same thing. They'll just dissolve if you don't eat them within a day or two. Now, how to identify gilled mushrooms? That's what we're going to talk about today. There's lots of different kinds of mushrooms and all different kinds of spore-bearing surfaces, but we're going to talk about the gilled ones today, and it's not as difficult as you think to identify them. Once you do a spore print, you have to do a spore print. What color is a spore print? And I'll show you some examples later. And note the gill attachment to the stipe. Is it free, which means it doesn't even touch? And I'll show you a picture of that. Or is it attached or decurrent? Do the gills exude a particular color? What does it smell like? What tree is it associated with? Is it on the ground? Is it on, or is it on wood? So once you notice these things about the mushroom, then you can go to various mushroom books and look and see what it is. Does it have a ring? Is it off center? Does the stipe break like chalk or not? So all this is written down here for you. So those are the things that you should notice. Yeah, on page 4 at the top. Okay, so you have to notice all that stuff. And this is an example of the spore print that we're talking about. So you just chop the cap off at the top, put it on a piece of paper, and then the spores will drop off like I showed you before. There's basically 3 different colors of spore prints. It's kind of white, but then you have a teeny bit of yellow tinge to it, or a teeny bit of pink tinge. And there's pink, and then the dark. The dark ones are hardest to identify because you've got light brown, purple brown, rusty brown, chocolate brown, and black. So those are the hardest to identify, but it's once you follow it. And here's an example. It's just something I did on a piece of paper. And I know that you can't see white on white here, but if you come up close, you can actually see the spores on the white piece of paper. It just looks like baby powder on there. So here's the difference between white, and here's buff. There's pale yellow. Can you see that? Does that show up back there? And then here's really normal yellow. And then we have pink. And then there's salmon pink, which is a little darker. And then buff pink. So those are light spore colors, spore prints, but they definitely are a different color. And once you figure out the spore color, it takes you right directly to the family. And then you can go down to genus and species, and I'll show you how to do that. But a spore print is kind of the first line of identification. Then here's the dark ones, and see what I mean? You really can see the difference. Pale brown is different than rusty brown. Rusty brown, and this has a purple tinge to it if you look up close. And this is chocolate brown. This is like the store-bought guy that everybody eats. And then black. The Sarsaparillas and inky caps and Coprinus have a black spore print. So the ones with the dark spore print are a little harder to identify, but you can do it. Now I'm just going to show you some examples of mushrooms and the spore color. So this is a white spored mushroom, but don't be fooled because, by the color of the gills and try to take shortcuts. Because just because the gills are white doesn't mean the spores that come out of the gills are going to be white. Now here's a perfect example. You think this have rusty brown spores, right? It's a tricholoma. All tricholomas have absolutely white spore prints. So it would lead you in the wrong place in the book. If you go to the book and try to identify it by spore print and family, you'd be totally misled. So this has a white spore print even though the gills are kind of rusty brown looking. And this is super cool. This is a store-bought mushroom, or his cousin anyway, found in the wild. It's got pink gills when it's young, but then as it matures and gets older, they will turn brown. The gills will turn brown. But whether you get a spore print in the pink stage or the brown stage, it's going to be brown spores no matter what. So that's easy. And this one, purple gills, but if you do a spore print, it will be white. And this is the one that's edible. The people get mixed up with the purple Cortinaris that I showed you on the ground in that other slide. So this, just the color of the gills doesn't mean that the spores are the same. Sometimes you can cheat, which is really cool, especially if mushrooms are layered on top of each other. The spores from the top mushroom will drop onto the cap of the one below it. So this one definitely has a pink color. So this is a pink spore print. So you don't have to do a spore print. You can go right to the pink family and identify it presto. And Indoloma, okay, we've got black gills, but if you do a spore print, it's going to be pink. So it's just different. Coprinus have a black spore print, and they're very fragile and don't last very long. This is a perfect example of decurrent gills too. And the gills are kind of a buff color, but if you do a spore print, all Crogumphus are black spore prints. So that doesn't help you any, but it's a perfect example of decurrent, how it actually comes right to the stipe and goes down a little bit. Because that's an important characteristic when you try to identify mushrooms. So the mushrooms, when the attachment of the gills to the stipe is important to figure out which one it is. So if the gills are free, which they don't touch at all, they're attached in some way, or they come down the stipe like that one I just showed you. I'll show you some examples. Now here's a Pluteus, and see, this is free. That they do not even touch. And the store-bought mushroom is the same way. If you turn it upside down and look at it, the gills do not touch the stipe. There's a little space here. So that's what a free gill is. They don't touch. They don't touch in any way. And here's attached gills. You can see they come right to the stipe and they attach to this. It's kind of even. They come straight across. And if you notice, this is a Lactarius. This is the one that Hypomyces fungus overtakes and changes it into some weird blob that's bright orange. Actually gets rid of the gills, disappear, and it becomes big, long, hard ridges and makes it edible. But all the Lactarius have latex or milk. So the Lactarius is a fun species to identify because this latex, or the milk that's exuded when the mushroom is damaged, it can be pink or purple or white or orange or maroon, lots of different colors. So the color of the milk and stuff is an important way to identify the Lactarius. And here's a tricky one. This gill attachment, it's attached, but it's notched. It goes down, the gills go down a little bit, and then they go over and attach to the stipe. And you don't know any of this till you turn the mushroom upside down and look at the attachment. But they are attached, but they're notched. So the hard and fast rules don't exist. There's all kinds of this in-between stuff. And another example of decurrent, how it comes down the gill, down the stipe part way. So when we get to the identification a little bit later, you'll know what decurrent means now. And then there is a species got these thickly spaced and wide gills, and they're kind of waxy. All the hygrophorous species are like this. They're thick and waxy. Cortinarius, this is like that purple one that was in the ground. They have what they call a cortina. See that cobwebby stuff that's just on the edge of the cap? It looks like they call them cobweb mushrooms in the common books. But it's a little cortina, and it encloses sometimes, you'll see it. And when it breaks, sometimes you'll just see these fine, like strands of stuff on the stipe. And they always have a rusty brown spore print, so you can't mix them up, and people don't eat these things. They don't kill you, they're just one of those nausea, vomiting, diarrhea things. And Lactarius, Zonarius, look at the name, it's cool because Lactarius is the genus, but zones, look at these zones, it's like ring, you can see the rings on it, and this has white latex. And the gills are attached. It's a good example of gill attachment. And here's just another one, another Lactarius with white milk. Here's a Lactarius with yellow milk, or yellow latex. And these two, the one on the left is kind of a maroon milk, and then the one on the right has orange latex. So there's two different species of Lactarius. Now, what's the stipe look like? Okay, we've talked about the gill attachment. Now, does the stipe, near the base of the mushroom, look at your little picture there on the last page of your handout again. The first slide or something. So does the stem, does it have a ring, which is a partial veil? Does it only have a ring, or does it have no ring? Does it break evenly? Is it straight and sturdy, or does it not have a base at all? Because some of them grow sideways on trees. So I'll show you examples of all this, it'll make more sense. So here's an example of one of the stipe in the center. And you can see the partial veil, or the ring, and the vulva, which is the part of the universal veil that breaks. So that stipe has both the ring and the vulva. This just has the ring, and you can see how the ring develops. As the mushroom grows, that tissue breaks, and then it leaves that ring around the stipe. And here's a ring, but boy, it's going away fast. You know, sometimes they don't last long. So it has a ring that's starting to fall apart, but the base of the mushroom has no vulva or tissue or weird shape to it, so it's uniform. And here's one with a partial veil. It doesn't have a vulva, but the whole stipe is kind of shaggy. So, but that's different than a vulva on the bottom. And this has got a real clean stipe. Has no ring, no vulva, no patch of scales or anything. It's just straight and uniform, or fairly. And the russula is the only species that if you break the stem, it breaks evenly like a piece of chalk. It's got some microscopic characteristics that make up the stipe, where all the little cells are circular. It just makes it break real evenly, real even. So that's an easy way to identify russulas. And coprinus, this is shaggy mane's cousin, and it's good to eat too. But the stipes are very fragile and cartilaginous. If you break them, they don't break cleanly. They just real wiry, and they don't break well at all. Now this is all written down, so don't worry about taking notes or anything. The white gill, I guess it starts on page 5. The white spored families. So once you do spore print, then you know it's in this white spored family. So you'll, I'm sure, have this at your with you at all times. So what you know, it's one of these families. But Amanitas have the vulva on the base. Lepiotas are free gills. They have a veil, but they have no vulva. That's easy. Hygrophorus have the thick waxy gills that I showed you. Russulas break evenly like a piece of chalk. Now the Tricholomataceae is another problem. There's 64 genera. So whenever nobody knows what anything is, it's thrown into Tricholomataceae. But they always have attached gills, with or without a veil, grows on ground or wood, so there's all kinds of exceptions. But later you'll really see this makes sense. So once you do your spore print, you know it's one of these families. Then you look at this thingamajig that you take home and keep with you, and then you'll know. Okay, examples of the white, each of the 5 ones, the Amanita first. Again, this is another Amanita. Note the patches on the cap. It's got the ring and the vulva. So that's an Amanita. Now, Lepiota can be tiny or they can be gigantic. And Lepiota is ones that some people get mixed up with edible ones. The gigantic one, which was about this tall, is very good to eat. It's got a ring. This is a little tiny baby one. They're both Lepiotas, or in the Lepiota family, and this one is potentially fatal. So don't eat the little ones, and yet the big ones are good. But you can't mistake the size. You know, Lepiotas all are going to have free gills and white stipe and a ring, but no vulva. And again, it's listed on the sheet there, what the Lepiota family looks like. But look at the difference in size. I mean, it's kind of amazing. And the Hygrophorus, they have thick, waxy gills. They have no vulva and no ring. So that's here on the third one on page 5. Thick, waxy gills. Okay, then the Russula, they have, the gills are much closer together. They have no ring, no vulva, and if you break the stipe, it breaks like a piece of chalk. So again, that's easy. Now the Tricholoma. This one has notched gills. I mean, it looks like it's free when you look up underneath there, but the gills go down and then they go across and do touch the stipe. But it has no veil and no vulva. Now the pink sport family is easy because there's only 2 families, and one grows on wood and one grows on the ground. So if you get a pink spore print, then again that's listed here on page 5. And Entelomas have attached gills. Pluteaceae have free gills. Endelomas are poisonous. Pluteaceae are edible. I didn't put that in there. That's another good thing to put. See, look how you're helping me out here. Okay. So here's an example of an Enteloma. Even though it's got white gills, when you do a spore print, they will be pink, and they're attached. They come right up to the stipe. And here's an Enteloma with pink gills attached, again, no vulva, grows on the ground. And here's a Pluteus. Notice the free gills. See on the right side, the gills do not attach to the stipe. So it's not, you'd know right away that it wasn't an Enteloma. Free gills, part no veil, and grows on wood. And these you see in the forest a lot, growing on dead trunks and stuff like that. And they're very good to eat. And the ones that make you sick, the Entelomas, don't grow on wood. Now this is the one that a lot of the Asian people mix up because it's edible. This is the only other mushroom other than the Amanita that has this vulva at the base. And so you could think that, so the Asian people, these are the patty straw mushrooms you buy in the can, you know, put them in stir fries. It's Volvariella. It's an edible species. It's got no ring, but it's the only one that also has the vulva. So when some of those Asian peoples come to San Francisco or somewhere, they see this beautiful white mushroom, which looks exactly like the deadly white Amanita, they'll pick all these deadly white ammonitis thinking that